The original medieval cemetery, which used to be located well below the level of Brno's present-day central railway station, was ruined and destroyed after the banishment of the Jews from the city in the 15th century. The Jews were forbidden to live in the city for as long as 400 years and not allowed to come back until after 1848. The new Jewish cemetery was founded in the marshlands of Ulyanov district in 1852, after the county supervisor's fiat was obtained. The Brno Cemetery is the biggest present-day Jewish cemetery in Moravia. Viewed from the Richard Feder Park, the Jewish cemetery panorama is unmistakably dominated by the Hall of Mourning. The structure, built upon the site of the old Hall of Farewell, dating back to 1852, was put into service in 1900. Besides the vestibule and main hall, the building comprises another 3 rooms situated at one of its sides. The mortuary house has been in service since 1911. Even today, the imposing structure still conforms to the applicable hygienic standards. There is a separate room for the ritual cleansing of the deceased. The building also has its own technical facilities and a cemetery warden's office. Along with the foundation of the cemetery, a gravedigger's house was built. The house was torn down at the turn of the 20th century, and a new one was built in its place. The new gravedigger's house was most likely used mainly as a mortuary house, with one room set apart for ritual cleansing of the deceased. Later on, after a new mortuary house with a greater capacity was built within the cemetery's compounds, the gravedigger's house underwent a radical reconstruction. Since 2009, the building has been used as a tourist and information center with a lecture room showcasing a permanent exhibit of tombstones from the original medieval Jewish cemetery. The Avenue of Honor advances in the direction of the long axis of the mourning hall. The foundation stone, set in the perimeter wall at the north end of the Alley of Honor, commemorates the foundation of the cemetery in 1852. The graves of Philip Gompertz, Samson Frankel, Israel Popper, Heinrich Kafka, and David Mandel, the cemetery founders, are situated around the foundation stone. The cemetery gained its present expanse as late as 1935, as indicated on the memorial stone in section 38. Experts then estimated that the new area would be filled with graves as early as 1955. However, due to the Holocaust, during which most of the Jews from Brno were slaughtered, most of the added area was not used. It will be able to hold new graves for many more decades. Unlike in many other Jewish cemeteries, the obituary books of the Jewish cemetery of Brno have been preserved. The oldest burial entry dates to 1852. Gabriel Baer and Moritz Jelinek were buried at the Brno cemetery in the same year, as well as 2 children, Jesias Engel and Solomon Ehrenfeld, whose graves were left unmarked by any tombstones, as the tradition prescribed.
The memorial of the victims of the Holocaust was erected in 1949. It was created from 2 mortuary table boards. Along with 19 late Baroque tombstones brought here from neighboring Jewish cemeteries, the memorial symbolizes the immensity of the genocide of the Jewish nation, the Shoah, during which European Jews were nearly exterminated. During World War II, almost 11,000 Jews were deported from Brno and neighboring towns. A memorial plaque is mounted on the building of the elementary school in Merhautova Street, from where the 12 transports to Terezin departed between 1941 and 1943. Only some 1,000 survivors returned after the war ended. Nevertheless, the Jewish community was restored as soon as autumn 1945. Many of the Jews immigrated to Palestine after the communist rise to power in 1948, which again largely paralyzed the operation of the Brno Jewish community. The new rabbi, Dr. Richard Feder from Kolin, at the head of the synagogue, and the chief cantor Alexander Neufeld played a great role in its revitalization. Neufeld, together with his sons Arnost and Juraj, used to accompany the regular and holiday services held in the previous Brno synagogue, in use with their impressive singing. Rabbi Feder was elected the Landesrabbiner in 1961. Further development of the local Jewish community was not possible until as late as after 1989. Then the community revived again, and it expanded its activities dramatically, not only in the spiritual field, but in the social and sport domains as well. At present, the Jewish community's headquarters at 3 Kapitania Rocha Street houses the administrative offices and home care agency Yas, which above all provides services for the seniors who survived suffering during the Holocaust. A new mikvah, a ritual bath, has also been built in the Jewish community headquarters, together with a kosher kitchen and catering service, a library, and a meeting hall. The Brno office of the Department for Education and Culture of the Jewish Museum in Prague can also be found in the building, offering various cultural programs for schools and the public.
During the Holocaust, the city of Brno was a witness to the unspeakable suffering of its Jewish citizens, who were summoned here from the city's vicinity. As many as 807 Jews, who met their death in Brno sooner than they could be deported in transports to the extermination camps, are buried at the Brno Jewish Cemetery alone. The Jewish cemetery has recently launched a charity project with the objective of erecting tombstones on these victims' graves, so that they will be remembered. The tombstones are cut from Shlukhnov syenite and carved with inscriptions reading either Shoah or Holocaust. The project has been made possible by the charity of the people of Brno, Kameno-Průmyslové závody Shlukhnov, the Foundation for Holocaust Victims, the Brno Židanice district, the Jewish community of Brno, and thanks to the publication of the book, The Brno Jewish Cemetery and the Fates of the People Related to It. After a long 65 years, as many as 178 graves, which had been anonymous until then, were marked, the costs being over €40,000. Each visitor to the cemetery can still donate money to aid the charity project using the money box set in the wall of the mourning hall by the main cemetery gate. Children used to be buried either in separate sections or in separate rows within the adult sections at the Jewish cemetery of Brno. The child mortality rate was highest at the turn of the 20th century. Sections 6A, 7, and 13, which are full of children's graves, offer ample evidence. Section 7 alone comprises 739 graves. In Section 13, there are 455 small graves. At the turn of the 20th century, wealthy and prosperous Jews had their grand tombs built by leading architects, whose work can be found, for example, in section 23. Norbert Troller's design of the Weiss family tomb, section 23C1-6, served as a model to Johann Eduard Tomola, one of the major sculptors and monumental masons in Brno. The most capacious tombs can contain as many as 12 coffins, but they are far from full due to the slaughter of the Jews during the Holocaust. In fact, they are nearly empty. The tombs are located mainly in sections put into use after 1900, but some family tombs can also be found in other sections. The Lev Ber dynasty tomb is the largest crypt at the Jewish cemetery of Brno. Its huge above-ground structure roofs over an extensive underground section. 2 doors lead to the tomb. Through one, the subsurface space can be entered, while the other serves for lowering the coffins to the crypt. The most eminent members of Jewish communities are usually buried in places of honor in the Jewish cemeteries. In the Jewish cemetery of Brno, it is section 26B that serves this purpose. The chairmen of the Jewish community of Brno are buried here. In the military graves section, 45 soldiers who died during World War I in military infirmaries or in the nearby military hospital, also situated within the Zidanice district, are buried. The military hospital of Brno was founded in 1784 in the building of the former Premonstratensian monastery, dating back to the beginning of the 13th century. Nowadays, the hospital ranks among the top medical facilities in the country. Samuel Brunner studied at the Vienna Academy of Arts. He left to study in Munich in 1880, where he was later awarded the Ludwig Medal. From 1888 on, Brunner lived in Brno. As an artist, Brunner focused on still life paintings, paintings with biblical themes, and landscapes, mainly vedutas. His works were displayed at the Exhibition of Contemporary Culture in Czechoslovakia, held in Brno in 1928. In 1929, 160 of his paintings and drawings from between 1874 and 1929 were on display in the Brno House of Artists. Today, Brunner's paintings are part of the collections of the Brno Moravian Gallery. Vera Caponi, psychologist. After finishing her studies, Caponi worked as a psychologist at Kroměříž Psychiatric Hospital. She was one of the first psychologists in the then Czechoslovakia to engage professionally in marriage counseling, a new field of psychology. Caponi also systematically worked in the field of substitutive family care and became the head of the Regional Family Counseling Center in Brno in 1977. After 1989, Caponi became the vice president of the Marriage and Family Counselors Association. She also worked as an external expert for the Department of Psychology at Masaryk University in Brno for a short period of time. Caponi is known to the greater public as the author and co-author of a number of publications. Among her other achievements was her contribution to the Big Czech Dictionary of Sociology. Otto Eisler, together with his brothers Arthur, Moritz, and Hugo, co-founded a major construction company. Eisler himself designed houses and apartment buildings. Typical features of his works include windows aligned with the front facade, balconies ending in a semicircle, a fine exterior finish, and mainly plain design. Eisler, together with his brother Moritz, also participated in the construction of the Tugendhat Villa. He designed the synagogue in Skorzepka Street in Brno, built by the family construction company in 1936. Eisler managed to escape the war by going to Norway. When Norway became occupied by Nazis as well, he was captured and sent back, and then to Auschwitz-Birkenau. Otto Eisler is buried in the Jewish cemetery of Brno, alongside his brother Moritz. Dr. Feder studied at the Faculty of Philosophy and at the Jewish Theological Faculty in Vienna simultaneously. He got his first rabbi position in the small Moravian town of Koyatin, and later served in Loni and Rodnice on the Elbe, and for many years in Kolin. Besides administering his rabbinic duties, Dr. Feder also taught German and German business correspondence at the local business college. Along with his whole family, Dr. Feder was assigned to the Kolin Terezin AAD transport in 1942. He was the only one to survive. On April 19, 1953, Dr. Feder was inducted into a new office of the regional rabbi headquartered in Brno. He worked in Brno for the next 17 years, visiting Moravian Jewish communities and synagogal congregations, lecturing, teaching, and writing. He was named the head rabbi of the country, seated in Brno in 1961. On the occasion of his 90th birthday in 1965, Dr. Feder was awarded the State Medal for Merit in Development. He was also granted the Order of Tomáš Garrigue Masaryk by the President of the Czech Republic, Václav Havel, in memoriam in 2002. A memorial plaque to Dr. Richard Feder was mounted at the Jewish Cemetery of Brno and unveiled in 2003. He was declared an honorary citizen of the city of Brno. Heinrich Gomperz traded in wool from Hungary and overseas. When life in Austria was enlightened after the overthrow of absolutism, Gomperz became devoted to work in many public service and humanitarian institutions, many of which he had helped to found, such as der Mährische Kunstverein, the Artists' Union. Gomperz worked in the council of the Jewish religious community of Brno for a number of years. He has been known as an arts lover and collector who donated his collection of 437 paintings and 3 sets of drawings to his hometown before his death. The collection contributes to the richness of the Moravian Gallery. Ritter von Gomperz was elected a member of the Moravian Diet in 1861. In 1872, he was also elected a member of the Imperial Council, where he always fought for the interests of his hometown Brno and Moravia. He was also a member of various boards and many welfare societies. Gomperz was awarded a number of medals for his public activities. He was decorated with the Knight's Cross of the Order of Francis Joseph in 1863, the Order of the Iron Crown, 3rd Class, in 1872, and named an Officer of the Legion of Honor in 1878. He was knighted in September of 1879. Ritter von Gomperz became the chairman of the Jewish religious community of Brno in 1869 and held the position for 40 years. The Gomperz house was a place where the intellectual and artistic elite of Brno met. One of the considerable attractions was his wife Karolina, born Bettelheim, a renowned Vienna singer. After their marriage in 1867, she put a stop to her career and put her art exclusively in the service of charity. Her work was publicly recognized in 1882 when she was decorated with the Golden Merit Cross with crown. Audiences remember him as an outstanding interpreter of theatrical and movie roles, of amusing lovers, high school teachers, and old bachelors. After graduating from the Brno Conservatory, Haas performed in a number of theaters, including the National Drama Theatre in Prague from the 1930s. Haas became one of the most popular actors of his era. His dramatic art has been preserved in a number of movies, in realization of which he often participated as a scriptwriter or director as well. After Haas was expelled from the National Theatre of Prague because of his race at the beginning of 1939, he fled to the USA via Paris and Lisbon. He faced the unknown and was left without any resources, and yet he succeeded. Haas became renowned as a man of the theatre and the movies, working with world-famous writers and actors. He directed and produced his own movies in Hollywood. Perhaps his best overseas movie, Pickup, shot for Columbia Pictures, was a resounding success. Haas also worked for 20th Century Fox, MGM, and United Artists film studios. Haas spent his last years with his wife Marie, born Bibikoff, in Vienna, where he acted in several TV movies. He died in Vienna on December 1, 1968, and his remains were moved to Brno. Haas was declared an honorary citizen of the city of Brno in memoriam in the year 2000. The Hugo Haas grave bears an inscription commemorating his brother, the composer Pavel Haas, born 1899 and died in 1944. Pavel Haas studied music first privately with Jan Kunz and Willem Petrželka. But it was the influence of Leos Janáček, his professor at the master's school between 1920 and 1922, that proved crucial for the development of his musical genius. Haas was the only one among Janáček's students to master his technique of music composition and develop his own musical language on this basis. Starting in the mid-1920s, Haas belonged among many avant-garde Czech composers. His further life and works were strongly affected by the German occupation of the Czech lands. Haas was obliged to withdraw from public life, leave his family, and was transported to Terezín concentration camp in December of 1941. The Terezín concentration camp was unique in a way, as the prisoners were allowed to organize and participate in cultural activities. This oddity allowed Haas and other interned artists to address their co-prisoners in a way that would strengthen them and give them hope to live through the immeasurable hardship. The most eloquent evidence of Haas' work in Terezín is his piece, 4 Songs to Words of Chinese Poetry. The songs were performed many times in Terezín, and the piece got vast publicity. Haas was later transported to Auschwitz, where he was executed in a gas chamber in 1944. Heinrich Landesmann worked as a journalist in Berlin, Vienna, and in Dresden. After the Revolution of 1848, the Austrian police harassed him on account of his libertarian publications. Landesmann wrote novels, novellas, dramas, poems, philosophical treatises, feuilletons, and reviews in German under the alias Hieronymus Lorm. Particularly notable are his philosophical works, such as Nature and Spirit in Relation to Cultural Eras, 1884, or Unreasonable Optimism, 1894. Hard blows of fate were inflicted on Landesmann. He lost hearing and his sight deteriorated substantially before he lost it once for all in 1882. He communicated with his family and friends by means of a special touch alphabet of his own creation.
The same, only slightly adapted touch communication system, known as the Lorm alphabet, is still in use among deaf and blind people around the world. Hieronymus Lorm spent his last years in Brno with his son, a physician.
Alois Ludwig Jaitellus studied medical science in Prague and Vienna, and worked as a physician in Brno from 1821. He proved his expertise in medicine during the Great Cholera epidemic, which afflicted Brno from 1831 to 1836. The year 1848, when he started to engage in politics, proved a turning point in his life. Jaitellus became the chief editor of Brno Zeitung, an official newspaper, in 1848. From his youth, Jaitellus was interested in ancient Italian and Spanish drama, translating the plays and finding inspiration in them. He was a friend of Ludwig van Beethoven, who set some of his poems to music. A number of Jaitellus' plays, mainly comedies, were a great success, many of them staged in Vienna's Burgtheater. Baruch Jacob Placzek was conferred the degree of Doctor of Philosophy at the University of Hamburg in 1858. After working in Frankfurt on Main and in Hamburg for a short period of time, Placzek was summoned to Brno. Already a rabbi himself, he became an assistant to his father, the head rabbi Abraham Placzek, in 1861. Baruch Placzek became known as a preacher. He attended to the advancement of the Jewish religious community of Brno with great care, helping it to acquire some highly qualified teachers for its primary school and for religion classes. He played an important role in building the second Brno synagogue in Ponavka Street. After his father's death in 1884, Placzek was appointed to the office of the Moravian head rabbi of the country. Baruch Placzek, a knight of the Order of Francis Joseph, was one of the members of the Israelite Theological Seminary in Vienna, part of which was also a school for cantors. Dr. Baruch Placzek was also involved in the study of natural sciences. He distinguished himself as one of the major ornithologists of his era. His friends and colleagues from scientific circles included Charles Darwin and Gregor Johann Mendel. He also made his mark as a writer, publishing under the pseudonym Benno Planek. Among the noted descendants of Rabbi Baruch Placzek, his grandson, Georg Placzek, born 1905, died 1955, the world-renowned physicist, son of a factory owner, Alfred Placzek, has conceitedly made his mark. Georg Placzek studied first at the German Public Grammar School, and then he continued at Vienna University, while studying simultaneously at the German University in Prague. He defended his final thesis at the Institute of Physics of Vienna University, where he obtained 2 doctorates. After his temporary fellowships with various prestigious teams of physics from Europe, Placzek's departure for the USA just before the outbreak of World War II saved his life. He tried hard to persuade his family to leave as well, but was not successful. He was consequently the only one among his family to survive the war. Placzek was a key associate to Werner Heisenberg, Enrico Fermi, Niels Bohr, Viktor Weisskopf, Lev Davidovich Landaus, and Robert Oppenheimer, working in Los Alamos as the only Czech participant in the highly renowned Manhattan Project. Even today, he is still a well-recognized authority in his field. Ernst Wiesner moved from Malatsky to Brno in his early childhood, together with his parents, who were themselves born in South Moravia. Wiesner acquired his qualification in Vienna, mainly in the studio of Friedrich Ullmann, who highly valued his talents. He has come to be very well known for the construction of a villa for the director of the Czech banking house Union and a villa for the honorary consul of the Persian Empire in Brno. He designed some of the buildings of the banking houses located in the center of Brno and a number of villas above the Brno exhibition grounds. He is also the author of the Pitska Villa in Prague. All of his projects, including the prize-winning Brno crematorium, are highly valued specimens of modern architecture. Ernst Wiesner succeeded in fleeing from the Nazis into Great Britain, where he continued to work and where his grave is found. A fir tree named Chochma, which means wisdom, was planted on the occasion of the 50th anniversary of Rabbi Feder's arrival to Brno in April of 2003.
Ilan Ramon, the first Israeli astronaut, died tragically in the Space Shuttle Columbia in February of 2003. Rabbi Andrew Goldstein planted a larch fir named Koach, the strength, at the Jewish cemetery of Brno to honor his memory.